Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to celebrate an amazing artist, human, and absolute inspiration to not just me but also people around the world. And that is of course Frida Kahlo. If you're new to my channel, my name is Liza Compass, and I love making videos related to art, music, performance, and creativity as a whole. So if you're into that, go ahead and check out some of the other videos on this channel after you watch this one and hit that subscribe button so you can keep up and not miss a single video. As an artist myself, I am captivated not just by her work, but with Frida as a person. What she represented to so many people throughout her life and the incredible impact she and her art had on people around the world and still impact us to this day. Frida Kahlo endured near constant pain and suffering throughout her lifetime, facing tribulations that would utterly destroy most people. But Frida's story is instead an incredible one of determination, perseverance, strength, and an intense passion to express herself. It is impossible to view her paintings without being pulled headfirst into her soul. Today, Frida Kahlo is one of the most famous Mexican artists of all time, and a celebrated leader in the rise of female creativity during the 20th century. Despite her future notoriety, Frida lived most of her life in obscurity, feeling incredibly misunderstood and alone. Although she was often called a surrealist, Frida never considered herself to be, explaining, "I never painted dreams. I painted my own reality." The story of Frida's life is incredibly raw and inspiring, a story she put on display for all to see through her art, exploring the themes that impacted and shaped her life. She was fascinated with themes of duality and used her paintings to question the status quo, longing to bring equality between classes, race, and between gender. Frida refused to see the world in black and white, in left and right, or even sometimes right and wrong. She embraced the world as it is, just as she embraced herself, raw, unedited, and honest. Frida Kahlo was born July 6, 1907 in Coyoacan, Mexico City, Mexico. She lived a life plagued by poor health, which began when she contracted polio at just age 6, which forced her to become bedridden for 9 months and would ultimately result in her right leg being much thinner and shorter than her left. Her right foot also grew crooked, which caused her physical difficulty and emotional hardship from a very young age. Frida began wearing floor-length skirts to hide her deformity, and later took to wearing trousers in her teens, preferring to dress more like a boy, which was greatly frowned upon during the 1920s. Despite her disability, Frida was still an adventurous kid. She loved to dance and climb trees, living a normal, active life just like all of her friends. At 15, she began attending the National Preparatory School in Mexico City, with the intent to become a doctor. Her fascination with art would also be seated at this time, as she often spent her breaks sneaking in to watch the famous painter Diego Rivera at work on a mural for the school. She became infatuated with him, though nothing came of it at the time between the then 15-year-old Frida and 35-year-old Diego Rivera. And then when she was 18, Frida was involved in a horrific bus accident that would change the entire course of her life. Impaled with a metal rail through her torso, she lay broken and bleeding in the street. She was utterly shattered, fracturing her spine in multiple places and suffering broken bones throughout her entire body, including her legs, hips, ribs, pelvis, and collarbones. By no small miracle, Frida survived, but she would have a long road of recovery ahead of her. The accident left her permanently disabled and confined to her bed in a body cast for the next several months. She was told by doctors she would never be able to conceive children or live an independent life. But while Frida lay in bed, unable to move for months on end, that is when she began to paint. Frida had no prior experience as a painter before this, but her parents were incredibly encouraging, bringing her boxes of paints, brushes, and all the supplies that she could need. Her father built a special easel that she could use in bed, and hung a mirror atop where she laid so she could see herself, to be able to reference herself as she learned to paint. Because she couldn't get out of bed or go outside, any other elements incorporated into her paintings were done strictly from memory, incorporating objects, colors, symbology, and themes deeply significant to Frida. Despite her awful circumstances, Frida kept her spirits high, writing in her journal, "Feet, what do I need you for, when I have wings to fly?" With everything she was going through, Frida did not have the energy to do things like tweeze her eyebrows or shave her upper lip, nor did she care to. I mean, those really were the least of her troubles at that point. But she included her facial hair in her self-portraits anyway, even though she could have easily omitted features considered undesirable. But Frida did not see them that way. She was just happy to be alive and grateful for her body, including every single detail. Later in life, she would continue highlighting these same features, shading in her unibrow to emphasize it even more. Frida wore it like a badge of honor, using her unconventional beauty to challenge gender norms and societal beauty standards at the time. After nearly a year of recovery, Frida returned to school in a wheelchair. She struggled to keep up with her friends. No longer able to live the free and active life of a teenager, she and her friends ultimately would drift apart. With her newfound solitude, Frida's art took center stage in her life, and she continued pouring all of her focus into painting. Her new ambition in life was to become a great artist. She once again sought out Diego Rivera, visiting him as he painted murals throughout the city and sitting quietly to observe him at work. She eventually built up the courage to approach him, one day bringing 2 of her own paintings, setting them at the base of the scaffolding, asking him to come down and give an honest critique of her work. She told him of her circumstance and how she was an inspiring artist, and wanted to know if she had any real potential or if she was just wasting her time. Intrigued, Diego later visited her home to explore her other paintings in more depth, expressing to her, "In my opinion, no matter how difficult it might be for you, you must continue to paint." Frida and Diego began spending a lot of time together. Eventually, they fell in love. They each became each other's muse, seeming to complete each other in so many ways, and married in 1929. Frida's life was filled with newfound happiness and a hunger for vibrancy. Choosing to embrace her feminine side, she took to wearing her own interpretation of traditional Tijuana dresses, boasting colorful patterns and a certain regal flair from the society-based and matriarchal tradition. The style also included floor-length skirts and elaborate headdresses, which Frida happily embraced, to draw attention away from her deformed lower body and instead toward her face. Throughout her life, Frida would endure 30 surgical operations, forcing her to wear a combination of plaster corsets and back braces almost constantly. Frida often depicted the pain she felt inside through her paintings, including one of her most famous pieces, The Broken Column, illustrating the brokenness she felt inside through her own slashed open chest, open to reveal her spine as a shattered pillar inside, and the outside of her body riddled with nails and tied up in a back brace. To the surprise of Frida and her doctors, she did one day become pregnant, which came as a shock to everyone. No one thought she'd be able to conceive due to her injuries, and her doctor ultimately convinced Frida to abort the pregnancy, noting it would be far too dangerous for her to carry the child to term. This brought her incredible sadness and guilt. After all, she'd always pictured herself becoming a mother someday. So when she became pregnant a second time, she refused to have another abortion, determined to carry the child even if it meant destroying her own body in the process. But sadly, her body wasn't able to support the growing baby, and she suffered a miscarriage. The pain Frida felt from the loss of her unborn child was almost too much for her to bear. And of course, like every other ounce of pain in her life, she too expressed her agony in her paintings, capturing the utter anguish of miscarriage in several works. These paintings were looked down upon by society as being too provocative, grotesque, and obscene, but again, they were honest, and Frida ultimately didn't care what anyone else thought about them. Every painting Frida created was filled with symbolism, even her still lifes. Often using fruit and vegetation throughout her work, she was once quoted as saying, "Fruit are like flowers. They speak to us in a provocative language and teach us things that are hidden." Frida did not just paint fruit because she thought it was pretty. She often placed it in to allude to themes of fertility, sexuality, life itself, or, ironically, the lack thereof. Whether her paintings appeared provocative or unassuming at first glance, they all had an intimate story to tell and a far deeper meaning. Both Diego and Frida engaged in affairs throughout their marriage, Diego with other women and Frida with both men and women. They were both exceptionally tolerant of the other's affairs, however, until Diego crossed a line, sleeping with Frida's sister. Unable to cope with such betrayal, the two divorced in 1939. Following their divorce came the creation of The Two Fridas, a painting depicting two distinct sides of herself. Herself with Diego, dressed in white lace and filled with innocence, cutting out her heart to give it to the new Frida, now older and wiser, more independent and sure of herself, yet still holding a small picture of Diego in her hand. Throughout her paintings, you begin to see how Frida had multiple interpretations and sides to herself. Whether she was painting Frida the defiant, the heartbroken, or broken physically, the activist or the lover, a lover of self, of people, of animals, and of the world around her, everything she painted had a very distinct point of view of her intimate thoughts and identity at the moment. Monkeys made a common appearance in her paintings, often perched beside her chest or just behind her shoulder, as if there to lend comfort and support, to act as a confidant or even an extension of herself. Once more alone and heartbroken, Frida cut off all of her hair and stopped wearing the beautiful dresses Diego loved so much. But ultimately, the two decided they couldn't go living on without each other, and they remarried just a year later. Although she is known around the world today, Frida lived most of her life in obscurity as an artist, often being overlooked as simply the wife of her artist husband Diego. However, she wouldn't go completely unnoticed in her lifetime. Her first solo exhibition was held in 1953. Frida's health was in rapid decline, and while she was on bed rest and advised not to attend the event, she did anyway, having herself and her entire bed carried into the event. That night was likely one of the happiest and proudest moments of Frida's life. Later that same year, she contracted gangrene in her leg, and it had to be amputated. She still tried to keep in good spirits, taking to decorating her prosthetic in beautiful ornamentation. She learned to walk again and even tried dancing, but she was still in so much constant pain. In less than half a century, Frida had already overcome more hardship, more pain and suffering than most people would experience in 10 lifetimes. But she persevered through it all, making a life for herself as an artist and serving as an inspiration to many throughout her life and far into the future. In total, Frida completed 143 paintings, 55 of which were self-portraits. Her work exhibited in Europe during her lifetime, and she was able to travel all over the world and have incredible experiences. But even as a successful artist gaining recognition on an international scale, she was often met with criticism for choosing to paint herself so often in her portraits, to which she would respond, "I paint myself because I am often alone, and I am the subject I know best." Frida Kahlo became the first Latin American woman to have one of her paintings purchased by the Louvre in Paris, France, and following her death in 1954 at age 47, would continue to grow in fame across the globe. Frida Kahlo was far from perfect, but most importantly, she embraced her imperfections. She celebrated them. She allowed herself to explore her emotions openly and with relentless honesty, and she gave us all the gift of her art, the gift of herself to the world, to inspire and empower all of us for generations to come. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Celebrating creativity and individuality are some of the topics I'm most passionate about. So if you liked this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit subscribe down below, like this video, and join this amazing and growing family. I love making videos about my own art, music, and this journey we call life. So please let me know down below what you thought of the video and what more you'd like to see. I love reading all your comments and feedback, and while you're down there, be sure to check me out on Instagram and all my other social media accounts. You'll find all the links you need in the description box below. And again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.